My name is Ella. I am 29 years old, and I never imagined my own parents would steal my home. My grandmother Rose left me her penthouse when she passed away. It was supposed to be my sanctuary, but while I was away on a business trip, my parents sold it to pay off my sister's debts. When I confronted them, my mother looked me in the eyes and said, "You're homeless now. Deal with it." Before I tell you what happened in that courtroom, let me know where you are watching from today. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, because the look on my parents' faces when the judge read the verdict was something I will never forget. I grew up in Seattle, Washington, in a house where love was measured in favoritism. My father, Gregory, worked as a branch manager at a regional bank. He was the kind of man who believed success meant numbers on a spreadsheet. My mother, Sandra, was a homemaker who cared deeply about appearances. What the neighbors thought mattered more to her than what happened behind closed doors. Then there was my sister Meredith. She was 3 years older than me, and from the day I was born, she was the golden child. Meredith had blonde hair and blue eyes, just like our mother. She was outgoing, charming, and knew exactly how to work a room. I was different. My hair was brown, my eyes were brown, and I preferred books to parties. People said I looked like my grandmother Rose, and I took that as the highest compliment. Growing up, the favoritism was impossible to ignore. When Meredith needed a new car for college, my parents bought her a brand new sedan without hesitation. When I asked about transportation for my commute to community college, my father shrugged and said, "You can take the bus, Ella. It builds character." When Meredith wanted to attend a private university that cost $50,000 a year, my parents took out loans and made it happen. When I applied to those same caliber of schools, I was told we could not afford it. I ended up at a state school working part-time jobs to cover my expenses, while Meredith lived in a sorority house and never worked a single day. But there was one person who saw me for who I truly was: my grandmother Rose. Grandma Rose was my mother's mother, but their relationship was strained at best. Sandra always resented her mother for being independent, for choosing a career over staying home. Grandma Rose had worked in real estate for over 40 years. She started as a secretary at a small agency in the 1960s and ended up owning her own brokerage by the 80s. She was sharp-driven and unapologetically herself. My mother found her embarrassing. I found her inspiring. Grandma Rose owned a penthouse in downtown Seattle. She had purchased it in 1982 when the market was down, and she held on to it for decades. By the time I was an adult, that penthouse was worth over $1.2 million. It sat on the 23rd floor of a building overlooking Puget Sound, with floor-to-ceiling windows and a wraparound terrace. It was her pride and joy. Every summer when I was a child, I would spend 2 weeks at Grandma Rose's penthouse. Those were the happiest days of my year. She taught me how to read financial statements, how to understand compound interest, how to invest wisely. She taught me that independence was the greatest gift a woman could give herself. "Never depend on anyone for your security, Ella," she would say, her wise eyes fixed on mine. "Not even family. Especially not family." I cherished those words more than she ever knew. Meredith, meanwhile, continued to be the center of my parents' universe. She graduated from her expensive private school with a mediocre GPA, but my parents threw her a lavish graduation party anyway. She met Travis at a bar 2 years later. He worked in sales for a medical supply company, and he had the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. They got engaged after 6 months of dating, and my parents paid for a wedding that cost over $60,000. I graduated with honors from my state university. My parents did not attend my ceremony because Meredith had a doctor's appointment that day. When I asked if they could reschedule, my mother said, "Meredith's health comes first, Ella. You understand." I understood perfectly. Meredith and Travis moved into a large house in the suburbs. They drove matching luxury SUVs. They took vacations to Europe and the Caribbean. From the outside, they looked like the perfect success story. But I noticed things that no one else seemed to see. Travis never talked about promotions. Meredith always deflected when asked about savings or investments. Their lifestyle did not match their incomes. But whenever I tried to bring it up, I was dismissed as jealous. When I was 26 years old, Grandma Rose had a heart attack. She was 84 years old and had lived a full, remarkable life. but losing her felt like losing the only person who truly understood me. I held her hand in the hospital as she took her final breaths. My mother arrived an hour after Grandma Rose had already passed. The funeral was small and quiet, just the way Grandma Rose would have wanted. Sandra cried in front of the guests, accepting condolences with practiced grief. But I knew my mother was already thinking about the inheritance, the penthouse, the savings, everything Grandma Rose had built over a lifetime. A week after the funeral, we gathered at the office of Grandma Rose's attorney to hear the reading of the will. Sandra sat in the front row clutching her purse, ready to receive what she believed was rightfully hers. Meredith sat next to her, equally expectant. Gregory sat behind them, already calculating in his head. I sat in the back, still numb from grief. The attorney, Mr. Theodore Hawkins, was an elderly gentleman who had known my grandmother for over 30 years. He opened the documents and began to read. Most of the will was straightforward. Grandma Rose left some money to charity, some jewelry to a few close friends, and her brokerage records to a local business school. But then Mr. Hawkins reached the section about the penthouse. "To my granddaughter, Ella," he read aloud, "who reminded me of myself. May this home give you the independence I always wanted for you." The room went silent. Sandra's face turned red. "What did you just say?" Mr. Hawkins repeated the line. "The penthouse worth over $1.2 million was mine." My mother stood up so fast her chair nearly fell over. "That is impossible. That penthouse should be mine. I am her daughter." Mr. Hawkins remained calm. Mrs. Rose was very clear in her wishes. "The property goes to Ella." Sandra turned to me, her eyes blazing with fury. "What did you do? What did you say to her? You manipulated her, didn't you?" I could not speak. I was too shocked, too overwhelmed. Grandma Rose had given me her most precious possession. She had trusted me with her legacy. Gregory tried to calm Sandra down, but she was beyond reason. She stormed out of the office screaming about lawyers and contests and fraud. Meredith followed her, shooting me a look of pure hatred. I stayed behind with Mr. Hawkins. He handed me the keys to the penthouse and a letter Grandma Rose had written before she passed. I did not open it until I was alone that night. "Dear Ella," the letter began. "If you are reading this, I am gone. But I want you to know that you were the light of my life. You have my spirit, my determination, my heart. This penthouse is more than a home. It is a symbol of everything I worked for. I trust you to honor it. I love you always. Grandma Rose." I moved into the penthouse a month later. For the first time in my life, I had something that was truly mine. But I did not know that my own family was already planning to take it away. Life in the penthouse was everything I had dreamed of, and more. I had secured a position as a financial analyst at a fintech company in downtown Seattle, earning about $85,000 a year. It was not a fortune, but it was mine earned through hard work and dedication. The penthouse itself was my sanctuary. I woke up every morning to the sight of Puget Sound glittering under the rising sun. I decorated the space in a minimalist style that Grandma Rose would have loved, keeping many of her personal items exactly where she had left them. Her reading glasses still sat on the windowsill. Her favorite throw blanket still draped over the armchair. Being surrounded by her things made me feel like she was still with me somehow. After the will reading, my relationship with my family disintegrated completely. Sandra stopped calling. She did not respond to my text messages or my attempts to visit. Gregory followed her lead as he always did. Even Meredith, who I had hoped might eventually come around, treated me like I did not exist. When I called her phone, it went straight to voicemail. When I sent birthday cards to her twins Lily and Max, I never received a response. The rejection stung more than I wanted to admit. Despite everything, they were still my family. I told myself they just needed time. They would come around eventually. People grieve in different ways, I reasoned. Maybe once the anger faded, we could start rebuilding. A year passed. Nothing changed. I focused on my work, on my personal growth, on becoming the woman Grandma Rose always believed I could be. I opened an investment account and started building a portfolio. I took courses on real estate and financial planning. I volunteered on weekends at a community center that helped young women develop professional skills. Slowly, I built a life that I was proud of. At work, I became close friends with a colleague named Jasmine. She was a data scientist, brilliant and kind, with a sharp sense of humor that could lift my spirits on even the darkest days. Jasmine knew about my family situation. She never judged, never pried, just listened when I needed to talk and distracted me when I needed to forget. She was the sister I wished I had. Then out of nowhere, my mother called. I was at the Penthouse on a Saturday afternoon reading by the window when my phone rang. I nearly dropped it when I saw the name on the screen. Sandra. Hello? My voice was cautious. Sweetie? Her tone was warm, almost musical. How have you been? I have missed you so much. I did not know what to say. After a year of silence, she was calling me sweetie. I am fine, I managed. How are you? Oh, busy with the usual things. Listen, I was hoping you could come to dinner tomorrow. A family dinner. It has been too long, and I think it is time we all got together again. My heart lifted despite my reservations. Maybe this was the olive branch I had been waiting for. Maybe they had finally forgiven me for inheriting the penthouse. I would love that, I said. What time? The next evening, I drove to my parents' house in the suburbs. It was a split-level home in a quiet neighborhood, the same house I had grown up in. Walking through the front door felt like stepping back in time. The same floral wallpaper in the entryway, the same smell of my mother's pot roast, the same family photos on the wall, almost all of them featuring Meredith. My parents greeted me warmly, which should have been my first warning sign. Gregory shook my hand like I was a business associate. Sandra hugged me too tightly and too long. Meredith was there with Travis, and even she managed a tight smile and a nod in my direction. Dinner was pleasant enough, filled with small talk about weather and sports and neighborhood gossip. But I could feel an undercurrent of tension, a sense that everyone was waiting for something. After we finished eating, Gregory cleared his throat. Ella, there is something we need to discuss with you. Here it comes, I thought. Sandra leaned forward, her eyes glistening. It is about Meredith. I looked at my sister. For the first time, I noticed how tired she looked. Dark circles under her eyes, a tightness around her mouth. Travis sat beside her, his jaw clenched. What is wrong? I asked. Gregory sighed heavily. Meredith and Travis are in some financial trouble. Some trouble turned out to be a massive understatement. Over the next hour, I learned the truth about my sister's perfect life. It was all a facade. The house, the cars, the vacations, everything had been financed by debt. Credit cards maxed out to the limit. Personal loans from multiple banks. And worst of all, they had borrowed money from people they should not have borrowed from. People who did not accept late payments. Travis had lost his job 6 months ago and had been hiding it from everyone, including Meredith. The debts had snowballed. Now they owed over $300,000, and the creditors were closing in. They could lose their house, Sandra said, dabbing at her eyes with a napkin. Those children could end up on the street. I looked at Lily and Max, who were playing in the living room, oblivious to the adult conversation happening nearby. They were 5 years old, innocent, and full of life. My heart ached for them. We were thinking, Gregory continued, maybe you could help. I braced myself. How? The penthouse, Sandra said, her voice suddenly sharp. You could take out a loan against it. Use the equity to help your sister. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. You want me to mortgage Grandma Rose's penthouse? It would just be temporary, Meredith said quickly. I would pay you back. I promise. With what money? I asked. You just told me you are $300,000 in debt. Meredith's face crumpled. Please, Ella. They are going to take everything. I have children. I looked around the table at my family. My mother's calculating eyes, my father's expectant expression, my sister's desperate tears, and I heard Grandma Rose's voice in my head clear as day. Never put your security at risk for others' poor decisions. I need to think about it, I said. Sandra slammed her hand on the table. Think about it. Your sister is in crisis. This is not the time for thinking. We raised you better than this. Gregory added, disappointment dripping from every word. I stood up. I am sorry. I cannot make this decision tonight. I left without saying goodbye. I drove back to the penthouse, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. Part of me felt guilty. They were my family. Lily and Max were innocent children. But another part of me knew the truth. If I mortgaged the penthouse, I would never see that money again. Meredith had never paid back a debt in her life, and once my family had their hooks in my inheritance, they would never let go. I said no. It was the hardest word I ever had to say, but I had no idea that my refusal would push them to do something unthinkable. After my refusal, the silence from my family was absolute. No calls, no texts, no holiday invitations. It was as if I had ceased to exist. 3 months passed with not a single word from any of them. I tried reaching out to Meredith a few times, partly because I wanted to see my niece and nephew, and partly because I hoped we could find some middle ground. Every attempt was ignored. My texts went unread. My voicemails were never returned. I told myself it was fine. I told myself I had made the right decision. But the isolation gnawed at me, especially late at night when the penthouse felt too quiet and too empty. Work became my refuge. I threw myself into projects, staying late, taking on extra responsibilities. My manager noticed and started talking about a potential promotion. Jasmine, my constant cheerleader, reminded me that success was the best response to people who doubted you. Then came the business trip. My company asked me to represent them at a financial technology conference in New York City. It was a 2-week assignment, and it was a significant opportunity for my career. The conference would connect me with industry leaders and potential partners. My manager made it clear that this could be a turning point for my trajectory at the company. I was excited, but also a little nervous about leaving the penthouse for so long. It was the first time I would be away from it for more than a few days since I moved in. The night before I left, I walked through every room, making sure everything was in order. I checked the locks twice. I asked the building manager, a friendly man named Frank, to hold my mail and keep an eye out for anything unusual. What I did not know, what I could not have known, was that my mother still had a set of keys to the penthouse. Grandma Rose had given them to Sandra years ago, back when their relationship was still functional for emergencies. Sandra had never returned them, and now she had a plan. The conference in New York was everything I had hoped for. I networked with executives from major firms. I attended workshops on emerging technologies. I even gave a short presentation that earned positive feedback. For 2 weeks, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be, doing exactly what I was meant to do. On the flight back to Seattle, I felt lighter than I had in months. I was ready to return to my sanctuary, to curl up on my couch with a cup of tea, and to enjoy the view that never failed to take my breath away. I landed at SeaTac Airport on a Friday evening. I took a taxi to my building, rolling my suitcase behind me as I walked through the lobby. Frank was at his usual post behind the front desk. When he saw me, his face went pale. "Miss Ella," he said, his voice unsteady. "You are back." I smiled, confused by his tone. "Of course I am back. Did something happen while I was gone?" Frank looked at the floor, then at the ceiling, then anywhere but at me. I thought you had moved out." The words did not make sense. "Moved out? What are you talking about?" Frank swallowed hard. "There were movers here last week. They cleared out everything from your unit. Your mother was with them. She had paperwork saying the property had been sold." The world tilted. I grabbed the edge of the front desk to steady myself. "That is not possible." But Frank's face told me it was very possible. I ran to the elevator, jabbing the button over and over until the doors finally opened. The ride to the 23rd floor felt like an eternity. When the doors opened, I sprinted down the hallway to my unit. The door was unlocked. I pushed it open and stepped inside. The penthouse was empty. Completely, utterly empty. My furniture was gone. My clothes were gone. Grandma Rose's reading glasses, her throw blanket, her photographs, all of it was gone. The walls were bare. The floors were bare. There was nothing left but echoes. I fell to my knees in the middle of the living room. The same living room where I had spent so many happy hours reading, working, dreaming. The same living room where Grandma Rose had taught me about life and love and strength. It was all gone. I do not know how long I stayed there, crumpled on the floor, unable to move or think. Eventually, I forced myself to stand. I called the building manager, who confirmed what Frank had said. My mother had arrived with documentation showing the property had been sold. She had directed the movers herself. The new owners were scheduled to take possession at the end of the month. I drove to my parents' house in a daze. I do not even remember the journey. I just remember standing on their doorstep, pounding on the door until my father opened it. Gregory did not look surprised to see me. I was wondering when you would show up. I pushed past him into the house. Sandra was sitting on the couch watching television as if nothing had happened. "What did you do?" I demanded. "How did you sell my penthouse?" Sandra muted the television and turned to face me with an expression that chilled me to the bone. It was not guilt. It was not shame. It was satisfaction. "We did what we had to do for this family," she said calmly. "That was my property," I shouted. "Grandma Rose left it to me. It was in her will." Gregory stepped forward. "Your grandmother was confused when she wrote that will. That penthouse should have gone to your mother." "So we simply corrected her mistake," Sandra added. "How?" I demanded. "How did you sell it without my signature?" Sandra smiled. It was the kind of smile that belongs on a predator. "I have power of attorney, sweetheart. Your grandmother signed it years ago when she was still alive. It covers all her properties." My blood ran cold. "That is forgery. That is fraud." Gregory shrugged. "Call it whatever you want. The penthouse is sold. The money paid off Meredith's debts. It is done." I looked at my parents, these people who had raised me, and I saw them clearly for the first time. They were not just negligent or unkind. They were criminals. They had stolen my inheritance, my home, my connection to the one person who had truly loved me. Sandra stood up and walked toward me. She stopped just a few inches away, close enough that I could see the cruelty in her eyes. "You are homeless now," she said. "Deal with it. Maybe now you will learn what family really means." I turned and walked out without another word. But as I drove away from their house, something changed inside me. The tears dried up. The despair transformed into something harder, sharper, more dangerous. I was not going to let them win. I had nowhere to go. The penthouse was gone. My savings were not enough for a new apartment deposit on short notice, and asking my parents for anything was obviously out of the question. So I called Jasmine. "You can stay with me as long as you need," she said without hesitation. "My couch is your couch." Jasmine lived in a small one-bedroom apartment in Capitol Hill. It was cozy, but cramped, barely enough space for one person, let alone two. But she welcomed me with open arms and a glass of wine. And for the first time since I had walked into that empty penthouse, I allowed myself to cry. That night, I told her everything. The inheritance, the family tension, the $300,000 debt, the rejection, and now the theft. Jasmine listened without interrupting her expression, shifting from shock to anger to determination. "You cannot let them get away with this," she said when I finished. "I know," I replied, "but I do not know where to start." Jasmine squeezed my hand. "Start at the beginning. Find out exactly what they did and how they did it. Then find someone who can help you fight back." The next morning, I woke up with a clearer head and a singular purpose. I remembered Mr. Theodore Hawkins, the attorney who had read Grandma Rose's will. He had known my grandmother for decades. If anyone could help me understand what had happened, it would be him. Mr. Hawkins had retired from active practice 2 years ago, but he still kept an office for occasional consultations. When I called and explained who I was, he agreed to meet me that afternoon. His office was in a small building in Ballard filled with leather-bound books and the faint smell of pipe tobacco. Mr. Hawkins was in his late 70s now, with white hair and kind eyes that reminded me of Grandma Rose. "Ella," he said warmly, shaking my hand, "I remember you from the will reading. You look so much like Rose." I thanked him and then told him what had happened. The business trip, the empty penthouse, my mother's claim about power of attorney. As I spoke, Mr. Hawkins's expression grew increasingly troubled. "A power of attorney," he repeated. "Rose never mentioned giving Sandra any POA." "My mother said it covers all of Grandma Rose's properties." Mr. Hawkins shook his head slowly. "That does not sound right. Let me check my files." He disappeared into a back room and returned 20 minutes later with a thick folder. He laid it on his desk and began flipping through documents. "Here it is," he said finally. "Rose did grant Sandra a limited power of attorney back in 2010. It was meant to help with some paperwork while Rose was traveling abroad." My heart sank. So it was true. My mother did have legal authority. But wait, Mr. Hawkins continued, holding up another document. Rose revoked that power of attorney in 2015, 2 years before she passed. I witnessed it myself. I have the notarized revocation right here. I stared at the paper in his hands. So the POA my mother used was no longer valid. Not only was it invalid, but your mother would have known it was revoked. Rose sent her a formal notification. The pieces were starting to come together, and the picture they formed was ugly. My mother had used an expired legal document to steal my property. She had known exactly what she was doing. How did the title company not catch this? I asked. Mr. Hawkins frowned. That is an excellent question. Either they failed to perform proper due diligence or someone deliberately obscured the documentation. Either way, this is fraud. But the revelations did not stop there. Mr. Hawkins helped me trace the sale of the Penthouse. What we discovered was even more disturbing than I had imagined. The Penthouse had been sold to a limited liability company called Westfield Holdings. On the surface, it looked like a legitimate real estate transaction. But when Mr. Hawkins dug deeper, he found that Westfield Holdings had been created just 1 month before the sale. The company had no other assets, no other transactions, no legitimate business purpose. And the person listed as the registered agent for Westfield Holdings was Travis, my sister's husband. They did not sell the Penthouse to a buyer, Mr. Hawkins explained. They transferred it to themselves. There was no actual sale, no money exchanged. They simply moved the asset from your name to their company. I felt sick. My own family had not just stolen from me. They had constructed an elaborate scheme to do it, creating fake companies and using forged documents. What can I do? I asked. Mr. Hawkins looked at me with the same fierce determination I had seen in Grandma Rose's eyes. You fight Ella. You take them to court, and you expose what they did. He gave me the name of a younger attorney who specialized in real estate fraud, a man named Dominic Reyes. I called Dominic that same day and scheduled a consultation. Dominic was in his early 40s, sharp and confident, with a reputation for taking on difficult cases and winning. He reviewed all the documents Mr. Hawkins had provided and confirmed what I already suspected. This is textbook fraud, he said. Forgery, conspiracy, theft by deception. We have a strong case. I hesitated. They are still my family. Dominic leaned forward. Ella, they stole your inheritance. They called you homeless. They laughed at you. Is that how family treats each other? I thought about Grandma Rose, about everything she had worked for, about the legacy she had trusted me to protect. File the lawsuit, I said. 2 weeks after Dominic filed the lawsuit, my family received their court summons. I was not there to see their reactions, but I heard about them soon enough. Sandra called me that same evening. I let the phone ring 3 times before I answered. You are suing your own family, she shrieked. The warmth from our dinner months ago was gone, replaced by pure venom. Have you completely lost your mind? I kept my voice calm. You stole from me. What did you expect? We did not steal anything. That penthouse should have been mine. My mother made a mistake and we fixed it. Grandma Rose knew exactly what she was doing, I replied. And you used a forged document to take what she left me. There was a pause. Then Sandra's voice dropped to a hiss. You will regret this. No one will believe you over us. We are your parents. We raised you. Who do you think a judge will side with? Gregory got on the line. Think about what you are doing, Ella. You are going to tear this family apart. You already did that, I said when you called me homeless and laughed in my face. I ended the call. Over the following weeks, Dominic kept me updated on the other side's strategy. Sandra and Gregory had hired their own attorney, a woman named Barbara Shields, who was well known in local legal circles. Barbara's approach was to attack my credibility. She planned to argue that Grandma Rose had suffered from mental decline in her final years, and that I had manipulated her into changing her will. They are going to claim your grandmother had dementia, Dominic explained. They will say you took advantage of a vulnerable old woman. The accusation made me furious. Grandma Rose had been one of the sharpest people I had ever known. She had managed her own finances until the very end. She had beaten me at chess the week before her heart attack. Do they have any evidence? I asked. No medical records, no testimony from her doctors. They are relying on Sandra's word and hoping the judge will be sympathetic to a grieving daughter. Her doctor died 2 years ago, I remembered. But the medical records should still exist. Dominic nodded. Already requested them. And I have another surprise for them too. He told me about the security footage. The Penthouse building had cameras in the hallways and elevators, and the building management company kept recordings for up to 90 days. Dominic had subpoenaed the footage from the week when the movers had cleared out my apartment. If we are lucky, he said, we will have video evidence of exactly what happened. The footage arrived 3 days before the court date. I watched it with Dominic in his office, my heart pounding as the scenes unfolded on his laptop screen. The video showed Sandra and Gregory entering the building through the main lobby. They were followed by 4 men in moving company uniforms. Frank the doorman could be seen speaking to Sandra, who handed him some papers. Then they all got into the elevator. The hallway camera showed them arriving on my floor. Sandra used a key to unlock my door. For the next several hours, the movers went in and out carrying furniture boxes and everything else I owned. But the most damning evidence came from the audio. The building's security system included microphones in the hallways, and Sandra's voice came through clearly. "Hurry up," she told Gregory as they supervised the movers. "Ella is coming back next week. We need to finish this before she finds out." "Are you sure this power of attorney will work?" Gregory asked nervously. "It is old." Sandra laughed. "The title company will not check carefully. By the time anyone notices, the Penthouse will belong to Travis's company." I watched my parents plot against me in their own words. Whatever lingering hope I had for reconciliation died in that moment. "This is everything we need," Dominic said. They convicted themselves. The night before the court date, I barely slept. I lay on Jasmine's couch staring at the ceiling, thinking about what the next day would bring. I was about to face my parents in a court of law. I was about to publicly accuse them of fraud and theft. No matter what happened, nothing would ever be the same. But then I thought about Grandma Rose, about her strength, about her faith in me. She had given me the penthouse because she believed I was capable of protecting it. She had trusted me to be strong enough to fight for what was right. I was not going to let her down. The courtroom was smaller than I had expected, with wooden benches and fluorescent lighting that made everyone look slightly ill. I sat at the plaintiff's table with Dominic dressed in a navy blue suit that Jasmine had helped me pick out. Across the aisle sat Sandra, Gregory, Meredith, and Travis, along with their attorney, Barbara Shields. My mother refused to look at me. She sat ramrod straight, clutching her purse occasionally, whispering to Barbara. Gregory stared at the table in front of him, his face gray with stress. Meredith looked like she had not slept in days. Travis surprisingly seemed almost relaxed, as if he still believed he was going to walk away from this unscathed. The judge entered, and we all rose. Her name was Patricia Coleman, and she was known throughout the Seattle legal community for her fairness and her intolerance of nonsense. She was in her early 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes that seemed to miss nothing. "We are here today for the case of Ella Morrison versus Sandra Morrison, Gregory Morrison, Meredith Morrison Turner, and Travis Turner," Judge Coleman announced. "This case involves allegations of fraud, forgery, and theft related to a property transfer. Mr. Reyes, please present your case." Dominic stood and began outlining the facts. He explained the inheritance, the valid will, the revoked power of attorney, and the fraudulent transfer to Westfield Holdings. He presented documents showing that Grandma Rose had been of sound mind until her death, and that she had specifically intended the penthouse to go to me. Barbara Shields tried to object several times, but Judge Coleman overruled her each time. The evidence was too clear. Then Dominic called his first witness, Theodore Hawkins. Mr. Hawkins took the stand and testified about his relationship with Grandma Rose. He confirmed that he had prepared her will and that she had been completely lucid when she signed it. He produced the notarized revocation of the power of attorney from 2015. "Mrs. Rose was very clear about her wishes," Mr. Hawkins said. "She wanted Ella to have the penthouse. She told me that Ella was the only one in the family who truly understood the value of independence." Barbara tried to shake him during cross-examination, suggesting that his memory might be faulty given his age. Mr. Hawkins simply smiled. "I have practiced law for over 50 years, he said. "My memory is excellent, and I have the documents to prove everything I have said." After Mr. Hawkins stepped down, Barbara called Sandra to the stand. My mother walked to the witness box with her head held high, the picture of wounded dignity. She testified that Grandma Rose had suffered from Alzheimer's disease in her final years, and that I had taken advantage of her confusion to manipulate the will. My mother did not know what she was doing, Sandra said, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Ella spent years turning her against me, against her own daughter. It broke my heart. Do you have any medical documentation to support your claim? Judge Coleman asked. Sandra hesitated. No, Your Honor, but everyone who knew her could see that she was declining. Hearsay is not evidence, the judge replied. Continue, Ms. Shields. Barbara tried to rehabilitate Sandra's testimony, but without medical records, it was all speculation. The medical files from Grandma Rose's doctor showed no signs of cognitive decline. Her last physical exam, conducted just 2 months before her death, noted that she was alert-oriented and mentally sharp. Finally, Dominic played his trump card, the security footage. The video was displayed on a large screen for the entire courtroom to see. Everyone watched as Sandra and Gregory directed the movers through my penthouse. Everyone heard Sandra say, "Hurry up, Ella is coming back next week. We need to finish this before she finds out." And everyone heard Sandra laugh as she said, "The title company will not check carefully. By the time anyone notices, the penthouse will belong to Travis's company." The courtroom was silent. Judge Coleman looked at Sandra. "Would you like to explain what we just heard, Mrs. Morrison?" Sandra's face had gone white. "That was taken out of context. I can explain." "Please do." But Sandra had nothing. She stammered and deflected, but there was no explaining away her own words. She had admitted to fraud on camera. Dominic called me to the stand next. I testified about my relationship with Grandma Rose, about the summers we spent together, about the lessons she taught me. I read aloud from the letter she had written me, the one that said she trusted me completely and wanted me to have the penthouse. By the time I finished, several people in the courtroom were wiping their eyes. Even Judge Coleman's expression had softened. After closing arguments, Judge Coleman did not need much time to reach her decision. Based on the evidence presented, she said it is clear that the defendants committed fraud, forgery, and theft. The power of attorney used to transfer the property was revoked in 2015. The defendants knew this and proceeded anyway. The transfer of the penthouse to Westfield Holdings is hereby nullified. The property is returned to its rightful owner, Miss Ella Morrison. I heard Sandra gasp. Additionally, Judge Coleman continued, I am referring this case to the district attorney's office for potential criminal charges. The defendants will be notified of any further proceedings. Sandra shot to her feet. This is outrageous. She is my daughter. That penthouse should be mine. Judge Coleman fixed her with a cold stare. Mrs. Morrison, your relationship to the plaintiff does not give you the right to commit fraud. You had your chance to make your case and you failed. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down. I sat there for a long moment, unable to move. Dominic put his hand on my shoulder and smiled. Congratulations, Ella. You did it. I looked across the aisle at my family. Sandra was crying real tears this time. Gregory had his head in his hands. Meredith and Travis were arguing in heated whispers, already turning on each other. I stood up and walked out of the courtroom without looking back. The first time I returned to the penthouse after the verdict, I stood in the empty living room for almost an hour. The walls were bare. The floors were bare. Everything I had owned, everything Grandma Rose had left me was gone. My family had not just stolen the property. They had stolen every physical reminder of the woman who had loved me most. But they had not stolen my memories. They had not stolen my determination. And they could not steal the future I was going to build. I started over, slowly, carefully, one piece at a time. I bought a new couch that was nothing like the old one, a modern gray sectional that faced the windows and the water. I bought a new bed, new linens, new kitchen supplies. I could not replace Grandma Rose's reading glasses or her throw blanket, but I found a photograph of her at an antique shop, a picture from her real estate days, showing her standing in front of her first brokerage office, young and fearless and full of dreams. I framed it and hung it in the living room where I could see it every day. The legal aftermath for my family was swift and severe. Sandra and Gregory were charged with felony fraud. They pleaded no contest to avoid a trial and were sentenced to 2 years of probation and $50,000 in fines. Their reputation in the community was destroyed. The neighbors who had always admired them now whispered and pointed. Travis faced charges for conspiracy and was stripped of his professional licenses. He and Meredith divorced within 3 months of the verdict. Their house was sold to pay off creditors, and Meredith was forced to move back in with our parents into her old childhood bedroom with her 2 children. About 6 months after everything was resolved, Sandra called me. I almost did not answer, but something made me pick up. Ella, her voice was tired and broken. I just wanted to say I am sorry. For everything. I listened in silence. I know you probably do not believe me, she continued. I know I do not deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to know that I regret what I did. I regret how I treated you. I regret everything. I thought about what I wanted to say. Part of me wanted to rage at her to tell her exactly how much pain she had caused. Part of me wanted to hang up and never speak to her again. But Grandma Rose's voice echoed in my mind. Bitterness is a poison you drink hoping it will hurt someone else. I forgive you, I said finally. I forgive you for me, not for you. But I do not want you in my life. I do not want contact. I need you to respect that. There was a long pause. Then Sandra said, I understand. I ended the call and put my phone down. I did not feel triumphant. I did not feel vindicated. I just felt free. The months that followed were some of the best of my life. I received a promotion at work, moving up to senior financial analyst with a significant raise. The penthouse became the sanctuary it was always meant to be, filled with new memories built on top of old foundations. I hosted dinner parties for my real family, the family I had chosen. Jasmine was a regular guest. Mr. Hawkins came whenever his health permitted. I made new friends and deepened existing connections. I started a blog about personal finance, sharing the lessons Grandma Rose had taught me. I wrote about independence, about investing, about building a life that belongs to you and no one else. The blog grew faster than I had expected, attracting thousands of readers who related to my story. 1 year after the court verdict, I received an unexpected letter. It was from Mr. Hawkins, delivered by courier. Dear Ella, the letter began. Your grandmother asked me to give you this only if you successfully retained ownership of the penthouse. She was confident you would fight for what was right. Enclosed is information about an account she established in your name. My hands trembled as I opened the attached documents. Grandma Rose had created a trust fund for me separate from the penthouse, containing $200,000. The account had been earning interest for years, waiting for the day when I would need it most. There was another letter inside, written in Grandma Rose's familiar handwriting. Dear Ella, if you are reading this, you fought for what was right. You protected the legacy I worked so hard to build. I am prouder of you than words can express. Use this money wisely. Invest in yourself. Build the life you deserve. And remember that I am always with you in every sunrise over the water, in every dream you dare to chase. I love you forever, Grandma Rose. I held the letter to my chest and wept, not from sadness, from gratitude, from love, from the overwhelming sense that even in death, Grandma Rose was still watching over me. Today, I am 29 years old. I live in a penthouse overlooking Puget Sound. I have a career I love, friends who support me, and a future that belongs entirely to me. The people who called me homeless have lost nearly everything: their money, their reputation, their family. Not because I sought revenge, but because their own choices caught up with them. If you are watching this and you have been betrayed by people who were supposed to love you, I want you to know something. Their betrayal does not define you. Their cruelty does not diminish your worth. You have the power to fight back. You have the power to reclaim what is yours. You have the power to build a life that is truly yours. And the people who tried to tear you down, let them watch as you rise, because the only person who can make you homeless is yourself when you give up on who you are. And I never will. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to stand up against your own family to protect yourself? What helped you find the strength to fight back? Share your story in the comments below. If this video resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this story with someone who might need to hear it today. Thank you so much for watching and for being part of this community. I wish you the courage to protect what matters most and the wisdom to know that your worth is never determined by those who fail to see it. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next one.